on deaf ears. Jeremiah 36. Jehoiakim cast a scroll of Jeremiah's prophecy into the fire. Boy, doesn't everybody want to destroy the Bible? People have tried to do that for centuries, and that's exactly what Jehoiakim's going to do. Notice the first 10 verses in the temple. Barak reads a message that he wrote on the scroll, and the men hear it say, man, the king needs to know, well, first of all, where did you get this? How did you write this down? And he talks about how Jeremiah dictated it to him, and he wrote it. And so the prince's response to the message Barak wrote and read, they're excited about it. So we've got to get this to the king. He needs to know about this because we're in jeopardy. You know, we're doing about everything this says not to do. We're doing it. So when Jehoiakim hears it, he's not repentant. He's angered by Jeremiah's message and throws the scroll into the fire after he does what to it? Remember? The penknife. Yeah, he takes a penknife to it and cuts it up and tosses it in the fire. So Barak does what? Rewrites Jeremiah's message and adds, boy, I bet he adds a lot more words to it, don't you? Like, this is what happens when you destroy my words. So the historical setting, 4th year of Jehoiakim's reign. 606, 605, getting close, aren't we? Number one, what did God tell Jeremiah to write on the scroll of the book? Well, Israel and Judah and against all nations. Yeah, because, boy, here in a few chapters we'll be taking off with the Moabites and the Canaanites and all those ites. Many seem to think that God has pleasure in punishing people. What is it that God always desires for people who are living in sin? Always. Yes, absolutely. God created us because he wants fellowship. He wants to have somebody, you know, he wants to be worshiped. He wants to have our, he wants to be with us. He wants to have our company. And yet his creation, time and time again, rejects that, rejects him, and wants something different. It's really sad. He wants them to return from their evil ways, just like you said, repent, because he wants them to be with him all, forever. Who actually read Jeremiah's message? It was Barak. And where did he read it? Yeah, in the Lord's house upon the fasting day. In this chapter, what do we learn about the process that was used in Jeremiah's day to get the Word of God from God's mind into written form? God spoke to Jeremiah, and then Jeremiah did what? Spoke to Barak, and Barak actually wrote it down. And brethren, that's how we got the Bible, if you will. And the way we got the copies of it. Sometimes you'd have a room, 6 or 7 scribes sitting around, and one would read while the others would write. They were very meticulous with it. There were certain rules that they had. They would count the number of letters. By that I mean the consonants. And if it had the wrong amount, they would start afresh, and discard that. And so, it was a very good system. The Isaiah scroll comes to mind. When they found that intact scroll, if you will, in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves, all the scholars said, we probably didn't have, some would go so far as to not say 90% of the book of Isaiah wasn't like the original. Even conservative scholars didn't think it'd be, 50% of it would be accurate. And when they were able to break that thing down and look at it, it says the exact same thing your copy says. And so it was an effective means by which these men took their jobs very, very seriously, and aren't we thankful for that? Now, that doesn't mean there weren't errors. If we all set out right now and I started reading and you started writing down, by the time we were done, we could get together and compare them, and there would definitely be. Have you ever tried copying pages from the Bible? Nobody? Amber, have you tried? Yeah, I wonder who makes people do stuff like that, right? But you make errors. I used to try that because I kind of wanted to see. Yeah, you make mistakes. And then sometimes you well, I don't have my hard copy, but in my Bible I have made notes that are totally illegible. And then sometimes I get them magnified so I can see them well enough. I've misspelled words and stuff in there, just trying to write things down to remind myself of different things. So they did a really great job to not have printing presses and typeset, and it's amazing. Yeah. What was King Jehoiakim's response? We already talked about it. He cut it up, burned it, didn't repent, didn't tear his clothes, didn't wear sackcloth or ashes, didn't do anything that would have been very applicable for the event. After Jehoiakim did what God did with God's word, what did Jehovah say about what would happen to the king personally? Pretty heavy. Die? What about his burial? Throw him out. Be the dew of the mornings, and that's a big deal apparently for kings and such. Look at the Egyptians. Look at all the money and stuff spent just to bury kings. And I'm a veteran. I love people who were in the army. Love the sacrifice that's been made. But I still, I just think the tomb of the unknown soldier. Have y'all ever seen the changing of the guard? The 21 steps, 21 turn left, 21 turn left, 21 turn left, and 21 steps, and then the whole changing. But to be honest with you, I just think, that's a lot. Have those guys out there 365, 7 days a week, blizzards, they're out there. And so, as a nation, it's a great honor, and I know the troops doing it, but that's just, I'm building those big, those pyramids. It just seems to be a little over the top to me, personally. I do want to be buried, though, by the way. I don't want to be cremated. That seems to be what everybody's doing nowadays. They want to be, and don't ask me. I just, I'm trying to live my whole life so I can stay out of fire. That's the bottom line. And I just can't think going out that way, I don't know. I don't want to do that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and we all know that the soul, we're just souls that have a body. We are not our bodies. After he wouldn't have, none of his descendants, by the way, would sit on the throne either. Number 7, what does this chapter show us about men's effort to destroy the Word of God and its influence? Ain't going to happen. Just isn't going to happen. And as I appreciate Joel there just a moment ago, you just don't fight against God. It's just wasted effort. But we have a lot of people who don't want to acquiesce, right? Jeremiah 37, arrested by King Zedekiah. What's so bad is Zedekiah is going to ask Jeremiah later on to pray for him, and what is God saying now? Come back and ask him. But he considers, and Jeremiah is saying exactly what Zedekiah doesn't want people to do or to think. He wants a solid front. He wants everybody to work real hard in the defenses. Let's do everything that we can. Who does he remind you of that's pretty popular right now in the news? Anybody? Come on now, y'all watch a little news, right? There's a fellow by the name of Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. What's he wanting everybody in Ukraine to do? Fight, 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 right? And we're going to whoop them Russians. Rather, they ain't going to whoop the Russians. That's just, there's too many of them. And too much money, too much firepower and stuff like that. And the best thing that, can happen is they quit shooting each other. Quit blowing each other up. And Zedekiah is going to watch his sons executed before he loses his eyesight. He is going to lose his kingdom. He's going to lose his throne. He's going to lose his family. And he's going to spend the rest of his life in Chaldea and Babylon. And God told him, look, this is going to go down. It can go down one of two ways. You can go there healthy and you can deliver the people and y'all can go and then I'll bring you back. Or you can go as he chooses. And so that's why one of the reasons people hate Jeremiah. He's not playing for the team. He's not on the correct side, if you will. And so the Babylonian army is going to leave for a time, and you see question 2 happened with King Hezekiah, right? But that was a whole different story. God was fighting for them, not against them. And, he's just not going to work out for him. Number 4, what was Jeremiah in the process of doing when he was in prison? He's trying to leave, right? He wants to go outside of Jerusalem. He wants to go to the land of Benjamin to get away from everyone that's trying to hurt him, kill him, and arrest him. And before he can get out, they arrest him. And what is he saying? I am not. They think you're going to go over to the Chaldeans. You're going to go over to their side. And Jeremiah's like, man, I just want to leave here. I'm not trying to be on anybody's side. I'm just trying to get out and save my life. And once again, his motives are impugned. His loyalty to his people is questioned. And there is nobody that loves his people more than Jeremiah at this point. He's the only one that will face the facts. And that is the fact that God says this is going to happen. You can either go there willingly, alive, or they will drag you there, kill you, or drag you there. But he couldn't get anybody to listen, and so Hezekiah is mad, and so they take Jeremiah. They take and they beat him, and they put him in prison. And he's, after a while, finally allowed to go into the court of the prison. He's given a little bread. But initially, just terrible conditions, and it's only going to get worse as the siege lasts longer. You're not going to have any bread. So in chapter 38, notice Jeremiah is going to be cast into the dungeon now, and it's a miry dungeon. Hard to believe that you can have a place with mud in a place that we always picture being so arid. But obviously it has a water source here, probably an old cistern, you'd think, right? Ebed-Melech is allowed to rescue Jeremiah from the dungeon. Ebed-Melech happens to be an Ethiopian. What does that tell us about him? Nationally, what color is his skin? Yeah, he'd be a lot darker than your Arabs or your Jews. He's from Ethiopia. And Zedekiah is going to meet with Jeremiah during this time. He's the one that put him in prison. And you'll also see that Zedekiah is playing to the princes. Okay, he's doing what they will have him to do, just like so many politicians will acquiesce to the party line, or they will, even give up what they think is right to work with somebody so that they can give and take. And Zedekiah is trying to please the princes who are saying Jeremiah is causing problems. He is the problem, and he's in a rough situation, and he certainly doesn't handle it right. Well, notice some of these notes. Why did some conclude that Jeremiah wanted to harm God's people instead of help? Why were they thinking he's wanting to do that? And he's not promoting the defense against the Chaldeans, right? He's not on the team. He's actually rooting against us, when in reality, he's the only one that's trying to save your life. Describe the physical condition that Jeremiah faced in the next stage of prison. Well, they put him down in this dungeon. He sank into the mud, and that couldn't be very healthy. I'd imagine people didn't really care too much about what they threw down in there, and so probably stank, was unhealthy. And so Jeremiah, Ebed-Melech goes to the king and says, look, he'll die there. This place is not fit for a human. And so Zedekiah's like, well, we got to do something. So he gives Ebed-Melech 30 men to go, and they lift Jeremiah out with old ropes and stuff that they had made from scraps of stuff that were laying around. And so he's allowed to stay in the court, and he's given a daily allotment of bread as long as it holds up, because there's just not too much happening. Notice this is the final stage of the siege of Jerusalem. There's no more bread in the city, and what there is being rationed, and Jeremiah's going to get what they have to spread to share. It says, when it came to a message from Jehovah, King Zedekiah told Jeremiah, hide nothing from me. What do you think about these words of the king? I mean, personally, we've been in this class now, what, 7, 8 weeks, and we've talked about Jeremiah, we've looked at Zedekiah. What about his words? What you read anything into that? Totally subjective here now, whatever you think. What do you think? What's that? Absolutely. Has Jeremiah gave the first hint that he's changed any of God's will, that he's saying anything just to appease the king's ears? As a matter of fact, he's been jailed, he's been beaten, he's had his life threatened all the time. He sticks to his guns. So I thought it was kind of strange. Zedekiah would say, well, now you tell me, don't hide anything from me. Who else asked somebody not to hide anything from them? You remember? God was speaking to somebody close by, and remember the story? A fellow by the name of Eli, young man named Samuel, and Samuel needs to say, here I am. You go running there to Eli, and Eli says, I didn't call you, go back. Samuel, he did that several times. Then remember, Eli said, whatever he told you, let me have the whole skinny, and boy, he does, you're going to be punished. Your sons are going to be killed. Well, he doesn't hide anything from him, does he? He tells the king exactly what, and it's kind of interesting the deal that Zedekiah makes with him. Tell me everything, and then when he says that, he says, well, tell nobody what you told me. And he says, if they ask, you tell them, and it wasn't a lie, about why he had been there. Well, he was asking the king about prison and so forth. So number 5, we earlier read that God set before the Jews the way of life and the way of death from chapter 21. During the last days of the destruction of Jerusalem, what did Jeremiah again state was the way of life and the way of death for Zedekiah and his people? Surrender and what? Live. Fight and die, and the city will be destroyed. That's the life and death, isn't it? Some passages indicate that the Babylonian army destroyed Jerusalem. A number of times God said that he caused it. When Jeremiah spoke with King Zedekiah in the prison court, who and what did Jeremiah say would cause the fall of Jerusalem? Who's going to be responsible? Is that right? I've got Zedekiah's refusal to surrender. Okay. You notice how quickly I was ready to argue. I did this about 4 weeks ago. So, no, I think it's Zedekiah's refusal to. So, God's saying, I'm going to do it. He's going to use Nebuchadnezzar as a tool. Nebuchadnezzar is going to be my, the thing that I use to do this, he's going to be my servant, if you will. But in this particular time, he's saying it's Zedekiah's responsibility. And every one of those is true, right? I mean, God's hand is in this, rising up nations, bringing down nations. But at the same time, he's using Nebuchadnezzar and his just overtaking everything to punish Israel. And yet Zedekiah just absolutely refusing to surrender. And like I said, he's got pressure. I mean, everybody that he's politically aligned with are telling him not to surrender. They don't want to go to some place where they're not going to have any power. They don't want to have because what's going to happen when those walls of the city fall down? If you're hiding money, guess what? They're going to take it. And I think it was Josephus talking about the Romans taking over Jerusalem. I'm pretty sure they started gutting people because some guys were swallowing their money, and they started cutting people open to see if they had smuggled anything. So I'd say once that started, there wasn't no stopping it. Whether you had any or not, they're going to kill you. Number 7, where was Jeremiah when Jerusalem was taken by the Babylonians? In the court of the prison. And that's probably a good thing if you think. He's probably at least secure. And we find out here in a little bit that for the Chaldeans, Jeremiah's a rock star. They've heard what he's been saying. They've heard that he's been preaching that they ought to surrender because this is going to happen. And so he is treated very well. Notice the destruction of Jerusalem, the fate of Zedekiah and Jeremiah here in chapter 39. This is the 9th year, 10th month, and it's going to last to the 11th year, 4th month. So, as far as sieges go, that's not a long time. Zedekiah, of course, going to be captured. Going to see his sons put to death. The Babylonian army will deal with Jerusalem and its inhabitants. Nebuchadnezzar is going to instruct how to treat Jeremiah. And then Jeremiah's message of comfort for Ebed-Melech, who will survive all this. Notice this is it. This is the fall. So when you're reading Ezekiel, you're probably, 10 chapters into it when they get word that Jerusalem is fallen. So, I mean, these tie together real well. And so while Ezekiel is getting letters from Jerusalem saying, it has happened now. Remember, Ezekiel's got to start changing his preaching, starting to encourage the Jews to have kids, be successful, because you're going to go back. And tough job. Notice number 1 there. Because Zedekiah refused to surrender and secure the safety of his people, what two horrible forms of suffering did he have to endure? First of all, captured, and then watching his sons executed, and then having his eyes put out. Listen, I don't know how they did that, but there can't be a good way to put out somebody's eyes. So, I mean, that just had to be awful. His children dying. And, I had oftentimes pacified myself with that or made myself feel better, thinking, well, here this old man's having to watch, his 20 or 30-year-old sons, be executed. And come to find out, Zedekiah is probably early 40s. And so what does that mean about his boys? Probably much younger, maybe even 10, 12 years old. And that's just terrible. I guess it don't matter what age they are, but just when you think about small children paying that price. And why do you think Nebuchadnezzar killed them? Well, he's teaching people a lesson, but what is it about royal lines? The most dangerous place to be is in the royal family when the king dies, right? Because whoever does go to the throne, they're generally just going to clean house. And so you better be careful what you hope for, as far as how you're born and so forth. Well, this right here, you probably had to do a little bit of going back and doing a little bit of research, right? Just as they had done on previous occasions when Jerusalem fell, the Babylonians carried away some Jews. So here are the historical dates. The very first one, what do you have? First deportation. 606, 605. Yeah, 605, 606. And who would have been part of that? One of them wrote a book. Yeah, Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego, the princes, the very gifted young men who were raised by very affluent families, and they were going to become eunuchs. That was part of it when you served in the. I know we like to shy away from that, and we like to act like that eunuch in chapter 8 of Acts was probably not really a eunuch, just a servant of Candace. But we're being naive there. If you served in the king's court, that was part of it. And you remember that Jesus said some become eunuchs because they've been made that way. Some are born that way. Some have been made that way by men. And it's terrible. And then, some choose to be that way. But anyway, 606, 605. The second one? Boy, I sure wouldn't argue with you. I've got 598 to 597. And why are these things so, why don't we always give like two numbers like that? Why not just one? One of the things that's not very accurate, they didn't keep really the best records in the world. Do you remember what calendar the Jews were on? It's called lunar. And I think we all know what that means. There's not as many days. Now, in order to keep our calendar pretty much like it's supposed to be, what do? It's hard to put a quarter of a day on a year, right? So we have a leap year every 4. Well, the Jews have to do it a whole lot different than that. The lunar calendar, they like put in a week or something every few years to try to get it back on track. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's significantly different because they only have, what is it, 30 days? Is it 30 days in a lunar month? I think that's right. And so you can see you would really, you'd need to do something often and larger. And now who would have been in this group? This 598, Josh got a 596. We'll go with that. 59. We're not good scribes, are we, Josh? There we go. Uh-huh. Oh, no. Jeremiah's not in that. Jeremiah's here at the end. So who was in the second one? That's the one everybody's in. One of them's on the river of Kibar crying, right? Having a vision. Y'all probably talked about a few weeks ago. Who's that? No, Isaiah's been dead a while. Ezekiel, yeah, Ezekiel's by the river, by the rivers of Babylon. Y'all never heard that song? Where we sat down, and there we wept. It's a psalm at S-P-S-A-L-M, the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, that's Ezekiel, and that's that whole group. That's the major, group of Jews that go back. And then here at the end, what year are we? Pretty much lock this one down. It's 587 when the siege begins, 586 when it really takes hold. And so who's going to be in this one? Zedekiah. He's going to go back, not seeing very well. And anybody really that's left is going to go back. But there is going to be an element that's left. Let's talk about them for a little bit. Well, number 3, why do you suppose the king of Babylon treated Jeremiah with such human decency and did not force him to go to Babylon? Well, the text says they had heard what Jeremiah had been preaching, what he had been telling the Jews. Don't fight, surrender. There's no reason for all this bloodshed. This is going to happen. God said that if the Chaldeans only had one man and he was gimpy, he'd still win. That kind of tells you. You got to, come on now, tell me there isn't some humor in the Bible. Number 4, why did the Lord say that he blessed Ebed-Melech, who helped rescue Jeremiah? That's exactly right. He had trusted in the God of heaven, unlike everybody else in Jerusalem. Jeremiah chapter 40, we start kind of working out the details of what's going to happen to Jeremiah. Says his special treatment, allowed to stay, do what he wants to do. Verses 7 through 12, scattered Jews come to Mitzpah to be with Judah's governor, Gedaliah. And then Johanan's going to try to tell Gedaliah, look, man, there's something bad going to happen. And it's interesting, you're going to have an Ammonite king send a hitman, if you will, by the name of Ishmael. And you can't help but think of Ishmael. When you read that, you immediately go back to Abraham, right, and Hagar. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the questions on this. I need to see how far we're supposed to get tonight because we can start doing some through 43. Okay, just keep driving, right? Because I'd like to spend some time in the text, but in order to, we just basically have to talk about the questions that we've answered. It says, what choice did the captain, let me try that again. What choice did the captain of the guard of the Babylonian army allow Jeremiah to make? Well, should I stay or should I go? And what did the prophet decide to do? I didn't answer that part. He's going to stay, ain't he? Yeah, there you go. I didn't read the second part. Uh-oh. Well, I'm not going to argue with Amber now.
Well, I did because I had gone up to 43.
Okay. So we're already past where we're supposed to be. How cool are we? See, I'm so confused now on this. Yeah, I'm so confused on this now. So we don't need to do 38 through 43 tonight? Okay. Yeah, but we remember we had to adjust that. Yeah, so yeah, we're supposed to have done 33 through 37, and so just kind of drop down a line. And so next week we're supposed to finish with 43. So that means we can spend a little bit more time with this chapter. And so let's do that because I think it's just so interesting. The cutthroat, man, you know, it's unreal. How people will take advantage of each other and of a bad situation. And it's just terrible. And my wife, bless her heart, she just texted me 6 minutes ago to tell me what room number the man I just came back from seeing is in. I'm telling her how much I appreciate that. Hopefully she ain't watching this. So let's spend a little bit of time with this then. Jeremiah, I opened up the wrong Bible program. Because I always thought this dude had a cool name. I don't know about y'all, but I just think Nebuzaradan is a pretty neat name. Probably wouldn't name my kid that. It's a lot to say, right? But the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord after that Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had left him, let him go from Ramah. Remember what happened in Ramah? What significant thing that we've talked about recently happened in Ramah? Do you remember who was there crying for her children? Yes, that is used. Now, Rachel's dead, right? She's buried pretty close to that area, and she's buried in, you know what city she's buried in? Or at least on the way to? Bethlehem. Isn't that neat? It had a different name then. But that's where she's buried, and Jeremiah says Rachel was weeping for her children in Ramah because they weren't. And, of course, you could tie that in with the northern captivity of the Assyrians. Or you could tie that in with the fact they're been carried away. And then Matthew uses that to talk about the terrible things that the king is going to do, does, Herod, and killing all those babies. Notice he had taken him being bound in chains among all that were carried away, captive of Jerusalem and Judah, which were carried away into Babylon. And the captain of the guard took Jeremiah, said to him, the Lord thy God hath pronounced this evil upon this place. Wonder where he heard that. Now the Lord hath brought it and done according as he hath said, because ye have sinned against the Lord and have not obeyed his voice, therefore this thing has come upon you. And isn't that amazing? You got this pagan general of Nebuchadnezzar's army telling Jeremiah, you know, all this has happened, and he's dead on. He said, if it seems good in thee to come to Babylon, come, and I will look well unto thee. But if it seems evil and you want to stay here, then you just go ahead and do that. Verse 5, now while he was not yet gone back, he said, go back also to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, whom the king of Babylon hath made governor over the cities of Judah, and dwell with him. And so he does that. Jeremiah goes to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, and dwelt with him among the people of the land. That ain't been a couple of months. It says, now when all the captains of the forces which were in the fields, even they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah the son of Ahikam governor in the land, and had committed unto him men and women and children, and the poor of the land of them that were not carried away captive to Babylon, then they came to Gedaliah, and even Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, and Johanan and Jonathan and sons of Kerah. And so a whole lot of people are coming. And it's a good thing because the fields are going to be producing. There's going to be grapes on the vine and so forth. And so what does Gedaliah say? Don't fear the what am I saying? Don't fear the Chaldeans, but serve them. Dwell in the land, serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. As for me, behold, I will dwell at Mizpah to serve the Chaldeans, which will come unto us. But you gather you wine and summer fruits and oil, and put them in your vessels, and dwell in your cities that ye have taken. In other words, take advantage of this. The whole country is basically laid waste out there for you, and enjoy, and try to make a life of what we have left here. And so the Jews that were in Moab, which you remember now is on the other side of the Jordan River, on the eastern side, those among the Ammonites, which is just south of Moab, on the east side as well, and Edom, who happens to be the descendants of Esau, who are south of the Dead Sea, they hear this, and so they start going back. Even all the Jews returned out of the places whither they were driven, and gathered wine and summer fruits very much, because there's nobody there to harvest it, and so it's just basically laying around, waiting to be used by these folks who are coming back and occupying. Johanan, the son of Kare, now in verse 13, and all the captains of the forces in the fields came to Gedaliah and said, Listen, dost thou certainly know that Baalis, the king of the Ammonites, hath sent Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, to slay thee? And Gedaliah wouldn't listen to him. I guess he thought he had these few Chaldean servants, or soldiers with him, that he'd be protected. And why would a fellow Jew kill me? Well, that's exactly what happens. And this fellow is so sorry that he goes to Gedaliah's house and sits down with him. And notice, he says, Son of Ahikam said unto Johanan, the son of Kare, Thou shalt not do this thing, for thou speakest falsely of Ishmael. Sometimes, you just wish people would listen. Chapter 40, well, I guess we need to answer these questions, but chapter 41, we're going to see the man sits down to a meal with Gedaliah before he kills him. Let's go ahead and answer these questions. We said he was going to stay. Who was the one that was appointed governor? Gedaliah, the king of Babylon. What advice did the governor give to the Jews who remained in the land of Judah? Yeah, man, take advantage. The stuff that harvest is here. Take advantage of it. Prosper. Do well. Take the advantage of a bad situation. And about what plot did the leaders of the Jews warn the governor? Yeah, this king of the Ammonites, man. He's put out a hit on you, if you will. And Gedaliah is just not going to hear that. And it's too bad. He should have. We will stop here. And I'm so impressed. I divided this thing up by verses. But it seems like I need to look at reducing some of the chapters early. And, of course, we'll see how this thing plays out. Some of that, man, what is it, chapter 50 is like 64 verses long. So it's hard trying to figure out, where to spend more time and where not to. But we'll pick up here on chapter 41 next week. And sure appreciate y'all's attention. Appreciate you being here so late. Hope you're getting something from Jeremiah. There's so many lessons. In the back of this book, Brother Campbell's done an excellent job of just different lessons that we can learn from that. I don't know how much time we'll get to spend with that. And if we stay on course like we are now, we may get to spend a few minutes going over those. I really want to, no matter what happens, that last hour, we're going to dedicate it to Lamentations as best we can, because in my estimation, it's one of the great overlooked Bible books. I'm afraid to say a lot like 2 Corinthians. I've studied the Corinthian letters in 3 different schools, and all we ever got was an outline for 2 Corinthians. That's why I appreciate Chattanooga School of Preaching making that a full class. Well, let's go ahead and we'll close out here. And Josh, would you be kind enough to close us, brother?